Welcome, everyone. There may be a few people coming still, but we'll get started just because there's lots of things to talk about, as you all know. Now, before we start, we're asking folks if they can put their location beside their name. And to do that, go into the participants list and click on your name. And then there's 3 dots there. So if you go to your name on the participants list, there's 3 dots on mine, it's on the right side. You click on that and just put rename and put your location, please. Okay. And then we'd also like folks to put their name in the chat so that we can keep track of who's here. So if you could put your name in the chat, that's helpful.
Oh, it's got my CNDP thing instead of
change your name.
You might also want to remind people to turn off their microphones.
Yes, and if everyone could mute, that would be helpful. Okay, we're getting there. Lots of folks. Well, welcome from right across this big country. And we've got lots of things on the agenda. We will be talking about sovereignty and the federal election later in the meeting. So if when we get into chat, you hold your questions on those, we'll have lots of time to discuss that later. Okay. Now, Paul is going to do a land acknowledgement for us to get us started. So Paul Strom from the East Coast. Paul, are you there? I know he's here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Here we are.
I hit good old mute button. This land acknowledgement encompasses all of Canada, and today I'm going to focus on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was started in June 2008 and ended 7 years later on June the 3rd, 2015. So in total, 13 of the 94 calls to action have been completed since 2015. 0 calls to action were completed in 2023. None. So far, that is a completion rate of 1.625 calls to action per year. In Canada, if Canada continues at this pace, it will take another 58 years until the 94 calls to action are completed, meaning that Indigenous peoples will have to wait until 2081 for reconciliation. In the words of Cindy Blackstock, Executive Director of the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society, she says, I believe it's important to think about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action as the survivors' work plan for the nation. The calls to action are really about justice and about learning from history. What do we have to do moving forward? We have to acknowledge the history of our relationship to date. We need to take responsibility for our role in what has happened. We need to take action to move from a relationship of violence and separation to one of mutual respect and dialogue. Only by connecting the truths with the past, with the ideals of justice, can we move forwards. What is reconciliation? It's about establishing and maintaining a mutually respectful relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples in this country. In order for that to happen, there has to be an awareness of the past, acknowledgement of the harm that has been inflicted, atonement for the causes, and action to change behavior. What does reconciliation do? It restores Indigenous dignity and identity. It documents Indigenous stories. It corrects misrepresentations of the past. It prevents public denial of events. It raises societal awareness. It supports conditions favorable to healing for survivors. promotes remembrance of tragedies, and it makes recurrence less likely. The justice implications, I was surprised to find out that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada has made 94 calls to action. Of those, 33 expressly call for provincial action, 15 of which specifically target the justice sector. Reconciliation is a verb. If you want to make a difference, pick one of the 94 calls to action and do something to help make them happen. As Murray Sinclair said, education is what got us here, and education is what will get us out. Thank you.
Pat, you're on mute.
Yeah, I realized that. Just takes me a minute. Wanted to take just a few minutes to talk briefly about the spring event. I know lots of you are busy planning, and some of you have let us know what's going on. If the rest of you could, as soon as you have anything even in the works, if you could let us know, and we'll get those on the map. The map on the website has the information for 2024 has been removed about the events, not the contact information. The contact information is still there. We now need to populate it for 2025. So if you have any plans or locations or any of those things, or want to change contact information, please let us know through the admin at seniorsforclimate.org email address. Thank you. Earth Day is April 22nd. A number of us will be doing things on the 22nd, but others will be doing it throughout the week. And so there'll be lots of plans happening, and unfortunately there's lots of things happening that will make that, we'll all be moving as the world moves. The theme for Earth Day through the earthday.org organization is Our Power, Our Planet. And certainly here in Winnipeg, we're going to be building on that. I would think others of you will be doing the same, but you've got lots of options. We want to emphasize growing our numbers, our visibility, and reaching out to other age groups. And joining with other local groups, if there are, or with some of the national groups that are all, there's a few campaigns going on, and we will keep you informed about those. So again, make sure you, as soon as you have information that you can put on the map, please get it in. Now, for the fall, there are things happening for the fall. Slowly, things are developing. Third Act, which is a seniors climate group in the US, is planning something they're calling Sun Days. And they're hoping it will be a global event, aiming for September 20th to 21st, where they will be promoting solar and other renewable resources. And we will certainly provide more information as it becomes available. And certainly if you go on Third Act's website, there is some information now, but there will be certainly more as we get closer to the date. Now, resources from your national teams. We've got a bunch of stuff going on. And Rolly, who is very involved with communication, his wife has had surgery, so their life has gotten very complicated. So he's asked me, she's doing fine, she's home. But he's asked me to give you some information. So the website there have been updates made to the website, and that will continue. There will be an event page that will be up next week. And they would like locations and groups to promote, who wish to promote their events, to provide the information so they can be posted. And this can be events before the Earth Day, the Earth Week kind of events. If you're doing something earlier, we certainly are prepared to promote that on the website. And Eric will be following up with an email with a template we can use for the information we need so that we get the location, the nature of the event, links, images, all that stuff. And there will be information on the documentary film. And it is basically done. Should be there before the end of the week. So that's it for the website. We are having a webinar March 5th at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. And this report is from Michael, who is also unable to attend tonight. There are two objectives for the webinar. The first is to give webinar registrants information about the purpose and objective of action events in April that are supporting continued and increased engagement in climate action. This will be particularly important as we head into the possible federal election around the same time period. We also want to raise emphasis for engagement in April and get folks to bring their connections in life to the event so that we get as big a crowd as we can and increase our engagement. The second objective is to give a focus to our theme for the webinar and events in April: our power, our country, our planet. To do this, there will be two speakers. Dr. Millie Roy from CAPE will address healthcare, affordability, and the threats of US-style medicine and climate denial, and how it relates to the climate crisis. The second speaker is Mark Lee, senior economist from CCPA, who will address the cost of living crisis, economic threats to our country. There will be time for a Q&A from on both these themes. And after an hour and a half webinar, there will be another 30 minutes for an after chat. And those invitations will be out soon. Eric is busy in the process of making posters that will be available. This is certainly going to be, we would like the invitations to go to everyone, not just you, not just to your subscription list, but as far as we can get it. So if you can put it on your own social media, if you can put it on, pass it along to your email list, all those kinds of things, it would be great. And the more people they'll have more information that they can use going forward. So it should be a very good evening. Okay, we also have some workshops in the plan, in the works, and Dave's going to speak briefly about that.
Thank you, Pat. So the top three, as voted for at our last meeting, were social media, building community, and election preparation. The social media workshop, the first one is going to be mid to late March. And I say the first one because when we started discussing it, we think we have enough material for two workshops. So the first one is definitely going to be mid to late March. The second one, building community, presented some interesting, I'm not going to say challenges, but interesting perspectives, because when I started talking with people about building community, they said, well, what type of community are you talking about? Are you talking about just the organizers and Seniors for Climate? Are you talking about the broader group of people who are involved in Seniors for Climate? Are you talking about the other organizations that are interested in climate change? Or are you talking about the local communities that people are involved in? So that's going to be a fairly big discussion, something we're going to have to sort out. That workshop is going to be targeted for post Earth Day. The third one, the election preparation, we're currently looking at the implications of third party status. And so we've got to get those cleared up first before we actually put something together and can propose a date. The other top workshops that lots of people voted for, but didn't actually make our list. We found out that there's already quite a few webinars available on this. And so what we're going to try to do is find some really good webinars and then use those in place of having a workshop. So those other top three that didn't quite make the big list were Reclimate, Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, and theater, the arts, and that is going to be addressed through street theater sometime after March the 5th, but before Earth Day. And that's it for the workshops, Pat.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Eric, do you want to speak briefly about the t-shirts? Because folks have been asking what's happening with those.
Yes, of course. Happy to give a quick update on t-shirts. Hello, it's nice to see everyone. So, t-shirts. I'm going to start by sharing my screen quickly so you can just get a sense of kind of what we're offering at the moment. These are the three designs. I hope everyone can see them on their screens here. This is what we're making available at the moment. You'll see there's two t-shirt logos. They look quite similar. The difference is that one is on a white background, which will allow it to stand out much better on different colors. And then of course there's one without the white background that, that'll work better for lighter colors or really dark ones, just ones that are kind of different from the color of the logo. We also have a very small hat logo. So at the moment, this is what we have. We're making these, they're currently available on the old toolkit. So the toolkit we gave out last year, many of you likely had access to it. If you can't find it, many of you also have my email, so you can reach out. But we will be sending this out on a new toolkit in the next little while. I'm preparing a toolkit for the April events. And so these will be included on that as well. Our approach to printing these and sending them out at the moment is that we're making these files available to groups so you can print them off kind of on a group by group basis. And we'll also be including alongside the shirts lots of different printing options just so it's a little bit easier to find more local printers. The reason we're not doing another central printing for these, kind of like we did with the flags last year, is that it can just be kind of a big logistical challenge, financial challenge, and a bit of an environmental challenge, right? We're getting it delivered to one place and then we're delivering it again separately. So this way each group can print exactly what they want individually. Speaking to these designs a bit more, if anyone did have another design request beyond what's available here, there will be an option on the coming toolkit with my email, so you can let me know and request that. Small changes we can absolutely do in a fairly short turnaround. So yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to mention about t-shirts. I'll keep an eye on the chat a little bit, so if you have questions, I should be able to see it there. But yeah, that's t-shirts for the day. Back to you, Pat.
Great. Thank you so much, Eric. Now, is there any discussion on or suggestions for additional resources that would be helpful for you going forward at this time that you'd like to share? And if so, please put up your hand and I'll try to see it. Janet.
Yes, I've spoken to Rolly and he suggested that the flash mobs would be able to have links under resources, and we're very much looking forward to hearing back about when this happens and if the titles that I suggested are acceptable.
Okay, and we will forward that to the committee. At this point, I'm not sure if anyone has an answer to that. It's probably in the works, but we will keep it on the list. Okay, Brian?
Just for some information, last year the t-shirts in Calgary cost $15 each. There was a minimum order. I think it was 100.
The larger the run, the less each unit is. In most, if you're going to do 10, it's going to cost a whole lot more than 50 or whatever per unit.
I can mention, oh, sorry to interrupt, Pat. I added this in the chat, but it might be
Go
better
ahead.
to say it out loud. We're looking at one supplier, for example, that Ricky, who I think is on the call, helpfully suggested. They're based in BC. They do quite green printing. If you get more than, I think, 15 shirts, it goes down to quite cheap, around $10 to $15 a shirt. And the shipping is free if you spend more than $250. So it's going to depend a little bit on the supplier, but we'll make sure there's lots of options along with the t-shirt designs.
Thank you. Any other things that might be useful for folks? Not seeing any hands? Then now we get to talk about our documentary. And Nancy has been working her computer is smoking, I think. She's been working so hard. So she's going to show us the trailer and talk about what's happening with this documentary that most of you should have gotten invitations to the premiere today. And so Nancy, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. So maybe what I'll do is I will just start by sharing the trailer, which I learned how to do today. So it'll take a second. Hang on.
We had such a big drought. Creeks dried up, springs dried up. And these fires started from lightning strikes. There were, I don't know, probably over 100 lightning strikes in a 20-minute period.
We have unprecedented amounts of fossil fuels emissions, carbon, in the atmosphere than there has been for over 100,000 years. And the consequences are that the planet is warming.
What we're doing here today, it's all about the planet. It's about making a healthier earth for everybody. And it's to get all grandparents across Canada. I think there's 10 million of us. We want you all in the same movement together.
We want to be the last generation hooked on fossil fuel and welcoming in the first generation of our children and grandchildren who will enjoy a prosperous and sustainable future.
We need a stringent cap on fossil fuel emissions. We need an end to fossil fuel subsidies. We need a freeze on new oil and gas projects.
If we don't do something now, we're going to lose everything. So we must stand up now in peace and work together for non-natives and natives to fight this demon.
We cannot develop any more fossil fuels. We can't burn the stuff they've got. We've got to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions. It's only at zero that we start to get this thing under control.
Every single person counts. Every single kilo, everything counts. So please treat the climate crisis like the acute crisis it is and give us a future.
When will the Canadian government have the political will to put people over profit? To put my future before their economic gain.
We have to reduce and get off fossil fuels very, very quickly. And understand the fossil fuel industry has an agenda and that the survival of future generations is not a concern for them.
And we are here in the year 2024 at a time when the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres quite accurately says, We're on the highway to climate hell, foot on the accelerator.
We are unstoppable! Another world unstoppable! We are...
Science is flashing a warning. Gotta heed the call. Vote out them climate deniers for the good of all.
Okay, so on February 20th, there'll be a invitational screening, and this is for all the Seniors of Climate organizers across the country who contributed to making this documentary. And we also wanted to invite people who spoke at the various different rallies. So we've included them in the invitation, and also videographers and people who helped out with the video work itself. So that meeting on the 20th, we'll screen the whole film. It's 60 minutes. And we'll talk about how you can get access to the film to support local organizing. So the idea is basically that we'll make the film available to Seniors of Climate organizers first, and not make it publicly available. We're also reaching out to cable stations to see if they will program it locally in different locations across the country. And then there'll be a later screening, forgotten the date we decided on, I think the first week of April for the
April 3rd.
April 3rd for the thank you, David, for the listserv of all the people on the Seniors Climate listserv and all the organizations that sponsor and endorse Seniors of Climate. And then following that, we'll make it publicly available on YouTube.
Great. Well, thank you. So, and if this little snippet is any indication, I'm really looking forward to seeing the whole thing. It's amazing work, Nancy. Thank you so very much from all of us. This has just been amazing. Thank you. All right. Now we're going to talk about some of the plans that some communities are working on. Not sure anything's quite finalized, but there's certainly lots and lots of work being going on. And we're going to start up north with Lois Little from Yellowknife. So Lois, could you give us an idea of what's been happening in the Yukon?
Northwest Territories.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know what? The colors of Whitehorse and Yellowknife always confuse people in southern Canada.
I apologize.
So, hello, everyone. I have been quite involved, I guess, over the last few months since October the 1st, when we had our first potluck and climate conversations event. We've had two following potlucks. The way that people like to operate in the north and perhaps in a smaller community, Yellowknife is 21,000 people. People like to talk to each other. People like to, David was talking about community. Well, we are building communities and we are building climate relationships amongst seniors, high school students who are part of the green teams, community members, various organizations that are involved with social justice, climate justice, labor justice. So we've actually, as a result of the 3 potluck and climate conversation events, we have essentially 80 people on our mailing list, and we have partnerships with 10 different organizations. So and one of the organizations is an environmental organization, Ecology North, they take the lead on Earth Week and run a series of events throughout the week. And so we're going to continue our approach to community building and supporting climate action and climate leadership. We're going to do daily climate conversation sharing circles around a campfire, and we'll serve hot chocolate and bannock or whatever to kind of nourish people. But the point is that we are going to continue to talk to each other. We're going to continue to inspire each other, and we're going to influence our own and our government's climate actions.
Great. My goodness, you're ambitious. But that sounds like a wonderful time. And I'm sure you'll get lots of folks involved. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I know.
Now, is Margaret Ann here from Halifax?
She's here somewhere.
Okay, Margaret Ann, have you unmuted?
There we go. I couldn't get unmuted. That was my problem. Just for future reference, I use my computer, but I have to use the browser on Zoom, and you cannot enter without using a passcode or a passkey. So when you send out only the Zoom link, I need a passcode or a passkey. So I'm on a much smaller device. So it's just, you know, just the Zoom link is not good enough. It won't connect me without a passcode. Because I'm using a browser link as opposed to the app. Just letting. So I'm on a tablet.
Right.
So I just thought I was madly before. So I was thinking, oh my God, there's no passcode. I can't get in. Anyway, I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia. On Earth Day in Halifax every year, although they haven't said the date yet, but I believe it will be Saturday the 26th. The Ecology Action Center and the Council of Canadians do what is now a large event called the People's Parade for Life on Earth. And so we will be joining the People's Parade for Life on Earth. There are lots of large animal costumes. They bring them from pageants all over, and people do, like, it really is a parade. It's absolutely amazing. People come to watch it. Like, it's but everything about it is about climate and environment. And so Seniors for Climate will be joining that. We're hoping that we're going to be a flock of birds in this kind of thing. But our big pitch on Earth Day is to invite people or tease them, inviting them to our October event. And our October event, Pat Kipping had this great idea, which is ring the bells that still can ring, sound the alarm. It's an emergency, and we have to start ringing the bells, sounding the alarms, and we are going to do a lot of bell ringing. So it's an emergency. We have to ring the bells. We'll probably have a kind of information-rich event like we had last year, but we also hope that we'll get a number of autonomous groups in the same way that Seniors for Climate nationally was looking for groups to do things sort of autonomously across the country. We're hoping to get people to do some things here that have to do with bell ringing. So Kairos is going to try and organize the churches to ring bells, and there's another group with the Anglican Church, although I don't know if this is the same in other places. In Nova Scotia, the churches are very poor and they can't afford to keep their bell tower. So lots of them have bells in their towers, but they can't ring them because they're not maintained well enough. So even if they have bells. Anyway, we're hoping to have church bells ring. The schools, it turns out, have buzzers, not bells, but we're hoping to link with Youth for Schools to do things in schools. We hope that we can identify, or it'll probably be us, a few brave souls that will maybe take a bunch of handbell ringing people, maybe singing too, into an RBC branch. So we want to do a number of public facing things that are information based, and then a little bit maybe that's a bit disruptive to get attention, but not damaging. And we're also hoping to have many actions across generations, just led by seniors on the sound the alarm, ring the bells theme. And I thought it was such a good idea. I thought others might like to include that theme in some of what they're doing. So that's what we're up to.
Well, thank you so much, Margaret. And the people of Winnipeg like the bell thing too. So I think we're going to be ringing the bells on Earth Day, but we haven't got that quite organized yet. Lydia from Niagara-on-the-Lake, can you tell us what's happening there?
Yes, hi everybody. So Niagara-on-the-Lake is about 18,000 people. So it's a small community. However, the Niagara region has close to 50 different environmental groups, all doing their own little thing. And part of what we've decided in Niagara-on-the-Lake is to reach out and to form partnerships. So for Earth Day, we are going to be doing basically a fair. So we are going to look at renewable energy. So it's a renewable energy fair. And we would like to start off with a video. We had planned to show a video from Denmark, which is called I believe, 2 degrees, just 2 degrees. But now that Nancy's documentary is ready, we might be showing that if it is available. Following that, we've got my co-organizer, Frances Stalker. She was going to be talking about how individuals can make an impact. And following that will be a presentation by Herb Zawatsky, who is from 50 by 30, and he is going to be talking about renewable energy and government grants, so home energy efficiency rebates, basically. Around the room at the end of the evening, we have invited vendors and producers of basically renewable energy. So from insulation to solar panels to heat pumps to windows, so geothermal, etc. So local installers in the Niagara region providing information to those in attendance. So that is basically it for our Earth Day. We're also planning a big event for around October the 1st. I think we're picking Saturday, October the 4th. And that is going to have several performances and also an invitation to all of the environmental groups in the Niagara region to come and set up information tables so that people can see that there's a lot going on. That's it for me.
Wow. That's amazing how much stuff you've gotten together already. It's going to be a great day. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anybody have comments on things they're doing that are or have been organized yet, or anything that you're planning that you'd like to share? Yes, Jenna.
Yes, we're really looking forward to the website being updated so that we can have access to people across Canada for the flash mob dance, songs, choreography, and insights into how you can have a flash mob. It's energetic and exciting. It gets people involved and happy to become members of the movement. And we're just looking forward to that website having access to all of this for people across Canada. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else like to share anything? Okay, now we're coming to...
Pat, there's a couple of hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Francis in Niagara and Laurie Goldman, I think it was.
Francis?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't see them.
There's physical hands like that, that's fine.
Oh, Francis?
Hi, thank you very much. Yeah, I couldn't find the hand on the screen.
That's okay.
So thank you to Lydia, who is my co-organizer in Niagara. I just wanted to mention something we've been doing recently, which is quite interesting. Our Lord Mayor, yes, we do have a Lord Mayor in Niagara-on-the-Lake. He has decided to hold a series of village meetings in the 5 distinct communities in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And so we've asked each of our members maybe to attend one and to ask a question. And last week, Lydia, who you just heard from, went and asked him what he was going to do to prioritise climate change adaptation, because we've had a climate change adaptation plan in place since 2022, and the council, which was elected for 2023, has just dragged its heels. And he was very fortunate because they'd just appointed the climate change coordinator that very day. She'd started work that very day. So he was able to answer. And he also made some other statements, which we were a little curious about. So we asked for help from our councillor, who is very supportive of green issues. And she helped us craft a letter to the press because Lydia's question was covered in all 3 local papers, which was great, under the banner of Seniors for Climate. And I'm hoping to see at least one of those papers publish our response, asking him to name the 27 environmental items that he claims are underway. But as our councillor Sandra O'Connor tells us, only 2 of those have actually been started. So we've made a little bit of a stir there, and if it doesn't get published, we'll be putting it on the Facebook page and trying other ways to let people know. And I'm going to the next one, and I'll be asking when Niagara-on-the-Lake, which, as you know, has a very popular tourist destination. We have 3 million visitors a year. I'm going to be asking him when he's going to set up a shuttle from the Queen Elizabeth Highway to the Old Town Centre, so we don't have all this mass of cars coming into the town every year. So that's just something I wanted to add to what Lydia said, and which is going to be great anyway.
Well, good for you. Things may be happening, or at least you can hold their feet to the fire. Now, Nick, you said there was someone else with their hand up?
No, I was just going, wow.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Nancy
Now
Taylor, maybe?
we are going to.
Nancy Taylor in Leicester,
Nancy?
BC.
Hi, I just wanted to share, we haven't really solidified our plan yet, but the beginning of it is a climate art workshop for the community, small community. And we will create art that will be displayed in our little museum. And then April is also Poetry Month in Canada. So we have a spoken word poetry teacher that used to teach in the high school here, coming to do a workshop so that we can write a rap song or a spoken word poem and perform it during Earth Week. So we're going to have an art show and poetry and the film. So that's where we are so far.
Oh, good. Well, we'll have to let everybody else know that it's Poetry Month. That's, yes. Nick, do you see anyone else?
I don't see anyone. If you hold your hand up, if you are putting your hand up physically, just keep it up while we look. I don't see anyone. No.
Okay. All right. So the next thing on our agenda is the chaos that is happening and has resulted in the emphasis being on nationalism and sovereignty and basically overshadowing the federal election, which is also going to happen no matter what they do down there. So Nick is going to give us some overview, and then we have a guest speaker.
Okay, thank you. Just to go back a little bit, as everybody knows, we organized last fall for the big event on October 1st, and we tried to reach as many people as possible, join with others. Coming out of that, we looked at, were there other events happening either in Canada or around the world that we could link up with in terms of timing? When we didn't find anything, we settled the Earth Day as the target for what we're organizing next, with the understanding that in the fall we'll be doing yet another event. And we know now that at least the third act and possibly a global set of events will be happening in late September. So, but as Pat mentioned, something changed. And since that decision was made, and that, of course, we know what that is, and that's the emergence of Donald Trump and his massive attack internally and externally, globally, and the repercussions of that. So we're now dealing with this as we go forward, and we have to think about how to link up or how to use or how to react to those issues and how they relate to where we're going, what we're trying to accomplish. So there's always been a history of tension between Canada and the United States. The U.S. has wanted to, in various degrees and in various ways, to take over or at least dominate Canada all the way through, going back to the War of 1812. Everybody will remember that in the 1970s, and in that period of time, there was a very strong wave of Canadian nationalism, of a desire to determine our own industries, control our own resources more directly, and to try to go against the domination, particularly of the United States in our economy. In the 80s, there was, of course, the free trade debate and the free trade election. And in the 80s, the option was to integrate more fully into the United States using free trade, or to reject that. And the concern at the time was the attack on our social programs that would happen, the competition and the movement of industry out of Canada. And the majority of people, as we know, voted against it, voted against free trade. But because of the way the electoral system works, Conservative Party won, even though they didn't have the majority of voters, and we had free trade. And since then, we've seen the disintegration of exactly what was predicted by those who opposed the free trade movement of the 80s, social programs, role of government in the economy, and more. And today, now again, we have this major offensive from Donald Trump, but not just Donald Trump, from the U.S. and from the billionaires that he's associated with. So what does he want? He wants to actually, he says it, I want Canada should be the 51st state. And I don't think that's a joke. I don't think that's said idly. I think that's the objective. And so they want our minerals, they want our oil, they want our water, they want our know-how, the industries that we have in areas of expertise. And they also, and this is the point, is it's also about climate destruction. Trump is deliberately, step by step, dismantling anything that he can that is about protecting the climate, about taking climate action. So why? Well, two reasons I can think of. One is that the movement for climate action is a democratic form of movement. It's because people know their future's at stake, and of course, they're becoming involved. And the more that we talk about climate, the more people are involved, the more democracy and democratic movement you have. He doesn't want that. But the other thing is he wants access to the Arctic and the minerals and the oil underneath the Arctic. He wants access to Greenland. So it's a deliberate policy in this that we're facing, which is to destroy anything that addresses the climate solutions. And that's what we're facing as a country now. Once again, just like the 1980s, we're having the discussion and debate. Where are we going to go? How are we going to respond? What does it mean we have to do? And needless to say, that'll be the issue in the federal election. How it will actually look, 2 months from now, is hard to say because things change so quickly. But we know that the battle in the days to come is about what future Canada will have. What do we want a future that's green, that it solves the climate crisis, that addresses issues of social injustice, that meets people where we have increasing use of oil and oil production and oil pipelines across the country? Do we want a future where we are exploiting the Arctic, where we have the destruction and wildfires that are happening because we aren't dealing with climate issues? And so that's going to be the debate. That's going to be the discussion. There are many in Canada. We had a discussion about this in the steering committee a couple of days ago. There are many in Canada who want to build more oil lines and pipelines across the country. There are many who want to promote industry in specific ways and aren't thinking about social justice issues or about the people. And that's the question we have to pose: a positive solution to the climate crisis, positive solution in terms of a green future. And we have to organize around that. That's beginning to affect us. Right from the beginning, we understood that we are not building this movement on our own. We're mobilizing seniors to show that seniors care, that seniors are a force. But we always talked about building alliances with others, and that's never been more true than it is now, given the issues that face us as a country. So we're looking to building broader, and we have to look at going into the next couple of months how we manage to work with others. So I want to introduce you now to John Cartwright, who's with the Council of Canadians. John's the chair of the Council of Canadians. John, I know since the 1990, when he was organizing in the building trades to retrofit housing, create green housing, and build jobs that way in a time where there were jobs being eliminated. He was a longtime president of the Toronto Labor Council for I don't even know how many years, a lot of years, and now is the chair of the Council of Canadians. John wants to talk to us a bit about what they're doing and how they see the situation we're facing going forward. After that, I'd like to have some discussion about what do we think about how this all affects us and what we're trying to accomplish. John?
Well, thanks, Nick, and thanks, everyone. I'm speaking from Toronto, the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, subject to the Dishwath-Unspoon Wampum Treaty between the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Huron-Wendat. And I know we're gathered on unceded territory and treaty lands from all across this place. So I know a bunch of you from the labor movement. I see Lucien from my very old days, and David and Barb and Nick and others that we've worked together on a green jobs agenda since the 90s. Some of you I know from the Council of Canadians, and others you maybe have bumped into in the movements around social, racial, and climate justice over the years. So I want to talk about a couple things. One is the Council of Canadians, of course. 40 years ago, we were formed to explicitly fight our business elites that wanted to create deep integration with the American economy, but also with the American politics and threatening our culture as well. And that was the birth of the Council of Canadians. And when Trump started talking about the 51st state, Maud Barlow, one of our founders, we got a letter from the children of Mel Hurtig, who was the other founder of the Council of Canadians, saying, the four daughters saying, this is the time to stand up and defend this country and reach out and mobilize Canadians against this crazy guy. And so we started talking, Maud convened a table of what we call the veterans, the people who are around that table, from Marjorie Cohen to Scott Sinclair and Duncan Cameron, Gord Laxer and others, joined with some other really smart people like Linda McQuaig and Steve Schallhorn. Some of you may have met them over the years. And we started talking about, what do we do in response to this time? And so the Council of Canadians created a program called Unite for the Canada We Want, and you can find that on our website at canadians.org. And we tried to combine top-of-mind things for ordinary people along with the urgency of mobilizing and forcing our decision makers not to align with Trump policies, because we've seen, as Nick has said, not just the petroleum producers, but the Business Council of Issues, a number of business voices every single day saying, we've got to align our policies. We've got to get rid of environmental regulations, allow full-on sending oil to the States and gas to the States. We've got to lower our corporate tax rates because, of course, we have to compete in that way. And we've got to move billions of dollars from housing and social services to arms spending and the military. And we got to figure out how we change the narrative. And so the notion of the Canada we want and uniting for the Canada we want is very much a frame that also comes out of about 8 months of discussion that I've been convening with national leaders of climate movements, of racial justice movements, of labor unions, of anti-poverty organizations, of others across this country to say, how do we actually face this momentum of the right-wing playbook that was written for Donald Trump, but our conservative leader of the Conservative Party is riding a wave possibly to victory? How do we do that? And we started talking about the conversations that needed to be happened. And so we're looking at what's the best examples of organizing we've seen in the last little while. Well, one of them was last October, and I was at the SCAN event in Trinity United Church, where I've been many, many times, and with Voice Faith, no big staff and no big support behind you, has actually modeled a way. And then last week in my hometown of London, Ontario, the Council of Canadians, the environmental movement in London, the Health Coalition, and the Labour movement came together for a town hall about the Canada we want to build together. Incredibly informative. And it was just local people that put all that together, that reached out to the publicity and came up with some concepts of action. At 12 days ago, I got recruited to go to Parliament Hill and launch something called Pledge Canada, or Canada Pledge. And that was with Charlie Angus, member of Parliament from Northern Ontario, from Hard Rock, Northern Ontario, Craig Scott, who is one of the foremost human rights and constitutional lawyers, law professors in Canada, Jean Tellier. Jean is the great-grandniece of Louis Riel, and told the story of why she believes we have to stand together against what Trump threatens. Mark Tewksbury, who's an Olympian champion, saying we have to come together. We can't have effectively, provincial premiers undercutting our resolve. And we have put that a pledge out, and in 12 days, 60,000 people signed up to that pledge. And they're all asking, what can we do now? What can we do now? Some are saying, give us a website where we know we can buy Canadian. Some are saying, let's start a boycott of vacations in America. Some are saying, how do we take on people like Amazon that have just fired 1,700 people in Quebec for daring to have a union, but are part of the horrific growing footprint of this just-in-time consumer economy? What do we do? And the answer, I think, is we look to our ancestors. We look to the people that built mass movements in this country long before they had formal parties or formal structures, whether they were people like Papineau in Quebec leading the Upper Canada Rebellion, or Art Manuel writing a book called Unsettling Canada and inviting us to say, how can we build a global movement that takes on very strong fights to, people like, Bromley Armstrong, one of the first Black leaders in our country to explicitly challenge systemic racism. So what we want to suggest, and this is, I'm not formally doing this as the Council of Canadians, I am offering up some consensus that came together with the steering committee of Pledge Canada, is that we challenge Canadians to organize in their local communities, to organize with the people. Everybody knows people in your communities. In most of the smaller cities, people in climate, in labor, in racial justice, and the women's movement have come together time and again. And you've just talked about some of those events. And around some key demands of protecting the jobs in the communities that are being impacted, around defending our democracy, particularly against the kinds of things that Elon Musk is doing, tremendous manipulation of news media and feeds and how people understand the world around them, and creating alliances and forging alliances, because Canada can't defend itself by itself. We need to have an alliance with other countries to stand off against the bully, but also reach down to Americans who want to support democracy and see them as our friends and comrades, not our enemies. And within that context, the Canada we want includes, of course, climate justice. We're thinking that if we invite people to start doing those things and invite them to start, organizing, putting pressure on their decision makers, whether they're provincial, federal, or municipal, things like Made in Canada for procurement again. Why don't we demand those in all levels of government? We've started to see a little bit of it. We had it as a concept. Made in Canada matters. Build our vehicles, our clothing for municipal workers and everything else made here in Canada. If we start this process of 1,000 flowers blooming, we may be in a position that the aluminum and steel tariffs are ready to come on March the 12th. maybe the day before we have a national day of action. We ask people across this country to do something. In one, in Atlantic, Canada, it could be a concert by a bunch of musicians. In Ontario, it's March break. It could be teachers and school kids get together and do teach-ins about Trump and a better option than bending our knee to him. In other places, it could be vigils. In other places, it could be parades. Who knows what people will come up with? Could be bake-ins and community dinners. But I think that from SCAN that when you reach out to people and say, you want to step up and get involved, people will do that. And when everything I've seen, the hundreds of emails we got back through Pledge Canada, people are just saying, what can we do? Tell us what we can do. And we think there's an opportunity. I wanted to kind of, test it with you guys maybe and see if you think it makes some sense to think about a national day of action, to say to every federal decision maker, there's explicit things you can do. To provincial decision makers, there's explicit things you can do, and even to city councils and town councils, there's explicit things you can do to fight back and resist. We think about resistance movements over decades and centuries, and I think the people that built the early women's movement, the people that built the first climate movement, the people that built the first Indigenous solidarity movements and the anti-racism movements, if we look to the record of what our ancestors told us, I honestly think we can build a lot of power in the time of deep uncertainty. I'll finish with this. 50 years ago, I met a fellow called Marshall Gans in the great boycotts. He was here in Toronto supporting Cesar Chavez, and those California farm workers are facing unbelievable odds. And they couldn't win through organizing in a strike, but they created a boycott that dramatically changed the balance of forces. And Marshall Gans became one of the leading labor and social justice educators in the world. And he reminds us that leadership is about the ability to enable others to act in common purpose at a time of uncertainty. These are clearly uncertain times. We need to act in common purpose. And I'm hoping you can give us some guidance of you think this could be one opportunity and one path to go in these coming weeks and months. Thanks very much.
Thank you, John. So we have now an opportunity to have some discussion about this, about where we're going. John mentioned the model we've been organizing around, and there's a lot of similarity when I hear John saying from what we've been doing. We have a time set for the mobilization, which is the Earth Week, and the question is, how do we relate to John's proposal, and how do we integrate and work in a broader way? So it'd be really good to hear what people think about the whole thing. So we have about 15 or 20 minutes, I believe, to talk about this.
Oh, and Nick, I'll just invite people to go to canadapledge.ca and sign on, and then they'll get all the information from that. Thanks.
Perfect. So maybe somebody can put that in the chat. Great. Okay, Tim.
You're on mute, Tim. There. No. There.
Sorry. That was terrific, John. That was a really useful call to action, and it echoed something that a call that I was just in recently with another organization where we had a very similar conversation. This was a different group. It was a group of 78, which is just focused really on Canadian foreign policy, but has the same concerns that it's all very well to talk about these policy areas, but each one of them assumes that Canada retains the autonomy to set its own policies. And what we're all looking at now is the possibility that that sovereignty will be eroded or taken away completely. And therefore, the specific policy concerns that we have become totally irrelevant because we won't be in a position to make our own decisions. Indeed, the group that I was talking to proposed something very similar to what you've done. You're a little further along, but to reach out to community organizations across the board where citizens can come together to advocate for their concerns, whether it be environment or human rights or labor or whatever, and start to form some links so that we can have an alliance which goes beyond what any one of our organizations can achieve by themselves. And as you can imagine, there's 20 or 30 organizations that come to mind almost immediately, involving students, involving women, involving Indigenous people, and so on. so that there is potentially an enormous network that taps into the fear and concern which I hear expressed. You've just expressed yourself. Canadians who are both angry and very concerned about what the implications are of what they're hearing from the United States. So I support very much what you're doing. And I'm going to suggest to the group that I was just on the call with a few hours ago that they reach out to you, to the Council of Canadians, and find ways to combine the efforts so we build more strength rather than having a lot of smaller activities.
Thanks, Tim. Anybody else? Some comments? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea too. Thank you very much, John. It seems to me though that if an event like this is to take place, that the focus has to be very sharp. I don't think it can be something where you can let people decide for themselves what tack they're going to take. I think they have to be given pretty solid direction as to what needs to be said and to whom. And I'm not sure who would be the one who would come up with that, but I think it's very important that it be highly focused.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Rob?
I think most of us in the seniors group remember Jesse Jackson in the United States tried to forge a rainbow coalition to fight against the establishment, mainly in racism. I think that's the sort of thing that John was talking about. And I guess as a way to start to achieve that, I would suggest that each of our groups write letters of endorsement to groups that they support that have similar objectives in our own communities. And in exchange, in conclusion of that letter, ask that group to send a similar letter back to show that we are in communication with each other. We know that we're all going in the same direction in slightly different itineraries along the way. But we need to start building that network in a very concrete way. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Ricky? By the way, if anybody wants to put their hand up, can't find the mechanical hand to do it, just hold your hand up for a while so some of us see it. Like just keep it up, kind of thing. Go ahead, Ricky. Sorry.
You're on mute, Ricky. Ricky?
Yeah, she's trying to solve it, I think.
Oh.
Not yet.
Not yet.
There you
No.
go.
There we go. Okay. One of the things that strikes me, I think the proposal of trying to do something together is really strong. I don't think that any one of our organizations is strong enough to do it alone. And what comes into my mind is the National Action Committee on the Status of Women. Some of us are very varied. And I'm thinking that we might want to begin the process of setting up a coalition like that to make sure that we're all focused on the right messages at the right time and can get ourselves organized. So I don't know. I mean, I think that this organization, Seniors for Climate, would probably we could probably figure out a way to delegate one or two people to such a group. But I would really think that we should try and sooner rather than later, try and organize at least some kind of a loose coordinating group. If I look back at last year, one of the reasons for our success, I think, was that's what we did. And I would really recommend that we move forward with something like that for an initiative like this. Thanks.
Ricky, can you just very quickly describe the NAC, like the experience very, very briefly?
Well, other people probably will be better able than I am. One of the people I think would be Judy Rebick. We could talk to her.
Yeah.
But NAC was a coalition of many, many organizations, including feminist organizations, but not exclusively. Like the Voice of Women belonged, a number of churches belonged. So it became a forum for trying to decide positions and actions and campaigns that were at the time quite successful on a number of areas. I mean, I think that the time for that kind of a coalition is back, but I don't think it can be a formal one this time. I mean, NAC was this time coordination.
Okay, thank you very much. Jerry?
I just wanted to say, well, I remember the whole free trade discussion. I can't remember the name of the farmer that was front and center through that whole thing, sitting there and being very much against it. But anyway, I like the idea of boycotts. And I think Amazon should be boycotted. I don't know how we would do that. Maybe we could just even start by doing the one day and just see what it took. Like in my opinion, if I lived in Quebec, well, I don't use Amazon. That's the problem. But anybody who lived didn't eat tuna for how long, and it took a while, but we can have an impact. So that's just my thoughts. Even if we just started with one day, that's what I'd like to see.
Well,
Right. These are really good thoughts, John. I'm really encouraged to hear about the conversations that the council has been having and all the players involved. Making change, from my perspective, is all about building relationships. I know from as a long time community developer, and I think I said this to Dave Smith about one trick ponies don't make the change that you want to see. You have to spend a lot of time and effort connecting with others and building those relationships. And I know that is definitely the case with the Council of Canadians. And the NGO world, the justice movements were severely impacted through the pandemic. Loss of funding, loss of capacity. And so there is a lot of work that needs to be done. So I guess I'm wanting to encourage everyone to think about building relationships and building them locally to be the grassroots movement of change. Thank you.
thank you, Lois. David? You're still on mute. You're still on mute. There you go.
So, yeah, hard to organize a resistance when we can't find our own mute button. John, thanks for the leadership. And I think that the Unite for Canada we want, the leadership from the Council of Canadians, the Pledge Canada, are both very important initiatives. And I actually think that the Council for Canadians is actually built for this time. With chapters across the country, with some program initiatives, and I think that that it is important that we think about building communities and that we think about coalescing both relationships and resistance, and we have to build. And I'm not sure that this is going to be quick. You mentioned March 11th, and I have to admit a certain nervousness about what we can actually pull together in a month. That I would like us to be having, that maybe that's a one-off, and it's not meant to be huge. It's meant to kickstart a process that we're going to build through April and the election. And this is going to take us a while. And I think that there is an opportunity to build more of a solid progressive movement at this time, just the way in the 80s that we built resistance against free trade and at that time the neoliberal agenda. So I would support any call from the Council of Canadians for March 11th, but I think that it needs to be scaled properly, and that we use it to start building, and then maybe we can link again with our Earth Day days and week in April, and that'll be during the election. We can build more about the Canada we want. The theme that we're building around for Earth Day is our power, our planet, and which means that it's not the power of the billionaires. It's not their planet. And I think that can be a moment of coming together again around that notion of the Canada we want. So I am totally frightened and totally optimistic that we can actually build something in this period. And again, thanks for coming out tonight.
Thanks, David. Donna Fay.
I remember the Mike Harris government, hateful, and the Days of Action across Ontario. There was a theme that the theme was go in the streets, don't go to work. And then I think various cities did what they wanted. In London, I remember we did a lot of singing. The labor movement had fabulous parodies of a lot of songs. I don't know, we did a lot of marching in the streets, but they just said, this is the day, do it. And we did. It's not that hard. That's what I remember.
Thanks, Vic. So we have maybe a few more minutes, another 5 or 10 minutes. I just want to pose the question. David's still going to come to John in your reaction in a minute. But I want to pose the question that David sort of started getting at, which was, for us, how do we integrate what we're doing into that movement? How do we take what we're doing Earth Day? How does it relate? I wouldn't mind a bit of feedback on that. Then we can go to John, see what he's taken out of the discussion, and we can wrap up at that point. Penny?
I was just thinking when somebody mentioned, having a message, that maybe just a simple message that we are proud Canadians, just that would cover all of us. It would keep it simple. We know that there is a feeling of nationalism around the country at the moment. So take to the streets, make some posters and say we are proud Canadians, and just let it be at that point on March the 11th.
Thanks. Nancy?
Yeah, I think this is a very good discussion. 350 Canada has this campaign around the national election, all of us, tax their billions to support all of us. And they're making the links between the cost of living issues and the climate crisis. And I think, thinking about that campaign, it also fits very much into this, because what the social crisis that we're facing is a massive assault on, the social safety net, if you like, if the social services that we still maintain, the assault that's happened even on institutions like the CBC, National Cultural Institutions. And of course, I mean, I have a long history with human rights work, so I've always felt that it's very important that we make the links to people who are fighting against racism and injustice that impacts people because of inequality and bigotry. And I think this is a moment when climate justice really needs to reach out and build alliances with broader social movements. Because, people talk about part of the identity of Canada as being that we defend equality and human rights and a social safety net and all of these things. But all of these things are under assault from this agenda coming from Trump.
Thanks, Nancy. Ann.
I saw something today, and I'll have to refresh my memory as to what it was, but along the lines of saying about doing something simple. There was some kind of movement which I saw that they're just asking people, I think it was the day before the tariffs were to come on, that everybody just display a Canadian flag. So you put a flag outside your house or you're going down the street or whatever to have the Canadian flag with them. And I think they were asking for this to be a national kind of signal, which I guess, that's one thing that's very simple and easy to do. And, not a lot of organizing just to spread the word that we're going to, fly a flag that day. So I can dig that up and see if we can spread it to everyone.
Thanks, Ann. Brian?
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on what I just heard about 350.org, which I know about their campaign. And I posed a question to you, John. They've already got some momentum going. How about everybody else joining 350.org and adding some energy to what they're doing and tweak it whatever way we want, or ask them to tweak it whatever way we'd like them to tweak it, so that we could, at that point, March 11th, I think becomes much more achievable.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So I'm gonna ask John to give us some reflection on what he's heard, and then I'm gonna wrap. Oh, sorry. Let me go to Lynn. Just go ahead, Lynn. Then we'll wrap up. Go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to add my absolute agreement with Brian. I really think that we need to join with 350.org.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to, John, hear your reflections, then I want to wrap up and we'll pass it back to Pat.
Sure, really quickly. Well, thanks for the comments. What we've tried to do is create a very broad tent. So Amar Pasian from 350.org signed the pledge. So did Tim Gray from Environmental Defense. So did Carole Bruet from the Climate Action Network, CANRAC, which is the umbrella for all the climate groups in the country. So did David Suzuki, but lots of artists and lots of singers and lots of premiers. We even found a few red Tories there. I know they're endangered species, but Danny Williams, former Premier of Newfoundland, signed along with Darrell Dexter, former New Democrat Premier of Nova Scotia, along with Kathleen, former Liberal Premier of Ontario, saying, and the language is very careful. I didn't craft the language in the pledge. It was done by people who know things inside out. So you will see it doesn't talk about citizens. It says all of us who live on this land. Because it doesn't matter if you've lived here 10,000 years or you've come here 10 weeks ago to pick our fruit, our vegetables, you are part of this Canada. We are all Canadians. And I actually convened a table in December where we had 30 of the top leaders of everybody from the National Council of Canadian Muslims to the Canadian Federation of Students to 350 to CANRAC to unions and Urban Alliance and Race Relations and on and on and on. Everybody has their thing. We're the broadest number of Canadians. Listen, I was an infantry sergeant in the reserve zone as a kid, but I would go to anti-war marches because I saw what was going on in Vietnam was obscene. And I worked with a fellow who woke up screaming every night because of the atrocity he'd seen when he was there and then took his own life. Like, we know there's people that have very different perspectives. We want people who love sports. We want people who are proud in that flag. We want people who maybe even went to some of those trucker convoys because they thought it was about freedom and then discovered it was actually a whole other agenda. I take a couple of points. So I'm going to say SCAN is not going to dissolve and tomorrow, join 350. That would be not a good thing, right? But none of the organizations are going to dissolve, but we can coordinate under this broad tent. I will say to the couple of cautions about can we pull something off in 4 weeks? I'm testing with you guys. You're the first test audience. You're a focus group after our conversations the last 2 days came up with that. It may be that we say, let's start a momentum in the way the kids started Fridays for Future, right? It wasn't all at once all the time. Greta Thunberg was there and then people started picking it up. And maybe we give it a couple of days and see if people think March the 11th is the right day. I see it as a continuum. In Toronto, we have a huge International Women's Day March each year, the largest in North America, and they are mobilizing like crazy because of what the politics of Trump and others mean to women's equality. There's other things going on before. This is Black History Month. So building a momentum that would include building up to whatever date it may be a different date in March, but we're just dropping it now because it's the day before the tariffs. Going to Earth Day and continuing a momentum puts the wind in our sails rather than having Pierre Poilievre and the angry axe the tax, fix the budget thing being the predominant politics in our country. I think we've already seen with Trump, that old joke in the 60s, one nuclear bomb can ruin your whole day. I mean, Trump has upended politics in this country. With Trudeau gone and the carbon tax no longer relevant in people's minds when you're about to lose thousands of jobs, it's a different dynamic in the federal election as well. So if we can build people power based on relationships, and I'm going to put in the chat actually the link to a review I did of Marshall Ganz's book, Back to the First Yet, but we want to get to meet in this journey for justice. So I want to thank you for your feedback. I'm going to test this with a few folks in this next 2 days. There's CANRAC, the Climate Action Network, has a big webinar tomorrow night with Naomi Klein. They're going to put it out there to say, what do people think about this idea of organizing from the grassroots? And you know what, if it doesn't turn out to be a big thing in my hometown of London, but Stratford does something well, hallelujah, and we will just, I'm a military historian, so I think of people in the French Resistance. It involved everybody from the royalists and the nationalists like de Gaulle over to people who were in the union movement, who were and Jewish citizens who were being, interned, over to the young kids that went to school and said, we're going to sing La Marseillaise just to show we are French. And then some people picked up a gun in the Maquis. But the railway workers made sure when those rail trains full of armaments were going, somehow they got derailed because they had that knowledge, right? Can we imagine all of us with our knowledge and our relationships and our creativity, doing theater, doing music, doing teach-ins? I don't know what the answers are. I'm just coming to plant a seed, hoping to get some advice from you, some wisdom from you. Tomorrow night, it'll come to that broader climate group. I've talked to the Canadian public employees today, a lot of interest there, and on and on and on. We'll only find this out. I'll end with this. Giorgio Geronimo, a friend who is one of the leading anti-racist educators in this country, used to remind us, we make this path by walking. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to walk and see what the path takes us. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. Thank you very much. So I just want to draw attention to a few things. One is that it's not just about being independent. It's about where we're going as a country. Being independent for its own sake is not going to solve the problem if we have a climate crisis that intensifies. This is about which direction we're going to take. And our role in particular is to make that connection about what it means to go in a direction that ensures that we deal with the climate crisis, that we have harmony with nature, that we, and that we do that in addressing the social justice issues. So I think that's very important. Has to be a key part of what we're talking about as we go forward. I think it's important we take Ricky's point into account, and John, about how to get together that coalition, which is not at all in opposition to the idea of organizing spontaneously 100 flowers blooming, but having some way of coordinating, some way of who makes the decisions about what's happening next, et cetera. And that can grow and is really important. And then we also have to figure out for us, given everything we're doing, where do we fit in? How do we maximize our ability to join up with others at the same time as using, the events we're organizing to drive home? It's about where we're going as a country. It's about what our future is going to be. And I think that's really important for us to consider. I'm going to hand it over. I'm sorry, Brian. I'm going to hand it over to Pat now. I've taken longer than she probably wanted me to. Pat?
Well, we didn't have the full hour and a half filled, but we certainly did fill it, and we could talk on this subject for a long, long time. Thank you so much, John. I think we need to keep us informed, and we will certainly do our part, because some of us can't walk very far, but we can certainly add our voices and our telephone fingers. Okay. And as we need a strong voice because of what's happening subscription base, there's a whole bunch of people on this call who do not have not registered on our email list. Everybody needs to go to the website and get their name on the list. We would also like you to reach out to contacts and ask them to go to the website and sign up. The goal for the year was to get 10,000 people on our subscription list. We're just over 3. We should easily get to 10. But if you can contact your contacts and have them contact theirs, this can be, we can certainly get that 10,000, but we need to do it. We also are in need nationally for some volunteers. We need folks for outreach, the Outreach Working Committee, and some organizers support people. So if you or anyone you know might be interested, if they can get a hold of Dave Smith through the admin email, we would certainly get back to you with what the jobs are and what's involved, and keep you informed on that. And we also want to update the map as soon as we can. So as soon as you have information, if you can get that into the admin email, we will get it on the map. And we are looking for contacts in communities that didn't have activities last October. So if you have neighboring or friends in neighboring communities or even far-flung communities, if you can get us those names, our outreach committee can reach out to them and talk to them about having events in their community this spring and in the fall. So that's it for the things we need help with. Our next meeting will be March 11th at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. And we will keep you informed about things throughout the month until we get there. And there will be an after chat for about half an hour for anyone who'd like to stay, but that will formally close this meeting. Yes, Nick.
We have to make sure that people know, we're okay in the after chat. I'm sorry. I was thinking of the webinar. You just stay on.
Yeah. So if you'd like to stay and chat, feel free. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending, and we'll see you next month and communicate before then. Okay, Tylene, I'm sorry. Can't read. I need to get closer. Can't read.
That's fine, Pat. I feel you. I was just wondering if I know us in Edmonton, we wanted a little more concrete idea of the theme. Like, so I saw from the t-shirts, later is too late is still like, well, is that just always going to be associated with Seniors for Climate, I guess I'm wondering. And then we were thinking the overall theme is Our Planet, Our Power, but we're also linking in the affordability, right? And so we kind of were wondering if there's a, kind of a catchy or a short theme that we're all going to use.
I'm not, other people may have a comment on that, but I think we are using the Our Power, Our Planet, which is the Earth Day theme,
okay,
and allowing communities to to work with that. In Manitoba, we have a Power Up campaign that one group is working. So we're going to use the Power Up for renewables for our power and our planet. So we're kind of combining with local kind of initiatives as well. So there's lots of options. Okay.
That sounds great. Does anybody have any kind of sub theme or whatever to use that does link affordability and climate activism? Like, because I think that's kind of I know the All of Us campaign has that, but they just have like a series of sub parts. Does anybody have anything ideas?
Nick?
But because things are changing, the messaging is adapting, and they're looking for. We had a discussion in the steering committee. There was some ideas about how to integrate our power. What is it? It's gone from my mind. But anyway, our planet, integrate that with the issues of economic insecurity, etc. And the question of the day in terms of what direction Canada is going to go in. So the messaging is still being refined on that, I believe, and there'll be some more. Probably by the time the webinar happens, which is March the 5th, then I think that'll have to be sorted out by then. And I presume if the steering committee and the messaging committee can sort out a bit more before that, we'll communicate that.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you.
Brian?
This is only a little bit on the cheeky side. My experience in all of these events that I've been involved in indicates that women are the leaders. That's what I have seen everywhere. My suggestion is that every woman brings their favorite man along to the whatever event it is, and we double the numbers.
Well, not all of us have a favorite man anymore, Brian, but that's okay.
Well, this is a good opportunity to develop one.
Oh, sure.
I say this cheekily, but in fact, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to continue to push that as we move forward.
Okay. Anyone? Nick, did you have other comment?
No, I was just, I only put my hand up to answer that question.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd